Hello everyone, and welcome to the third review of Harry Potter that I've done on my channel over the last little bit. This is actually the first book in the series that I'm making a video about that I haven't reviewed. Back in the day, I reviewed Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, planned on reviewing the rest, but as I got farther into the books, I just lost track of the videos and stopped reviewing them. I don't know if you can tell, but I have one of the illustrated editions of Harry Potter and all of the other three that are out right now. Got them for Christmas. Thank you, Mom. They are amazing. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you have absolutely got to get the illustrated editions because they're incredible. But since I've already talked about the first two books, it is now time to review the third book in the series, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This one took me a little bit longer to get through. I don't really know why. The first two books I was able to read in pretty much a day each, but this one took me a little bit longer. I had like a 2-week break in the middle where I just didn't read anything. Definitely took me back to the days of making book videos and getting into reading slumps, and I remember now how terrible that was. Obviously, this is going to contain spoilers if you haven't read the book already. The first thing that I noticed about this book that I really loved, and that isn't really in the other two books as much, is the fact that Harry already really belongs in this world at the beginning of the book. I get that vibe from him studying in his room and waiting for the owls from his friends, and then when he storms out of the Dursley's house, and then just when he's hanging out in Diagon Alley, you don't feel like he's making discoveries, you just feel like he's enjoying the fact that all these crazy things are happening. This book also starts out darker, which I really love, because later in the books, my favorite aspects are those darker themes that it gets into. But side note, I think the film version of this book is the one that comes closest to matching the vibe and aesthetic of the books. Just visually, it feels like exactly what I imagine the books being. Which, side note, that's again why I recommend getting the illustrated editions, because all of the art in those books feels like it's ripped out of the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, and it just matches the tones of the books so well, except all the way through the series. I think another reason why this book sticks out so much is that it really has almost nothing to do with Voldemort. He's barely even mentioned. It almost feels more of like a thriller, with that constant threat of Sirius Black being after Harry. You just get this vibe that like there's a tension rising and something bad is going to happen at the end. It adds a really good bit of tension to the story that sometimes felt like it was lacking in the other two books, especially early on with the arrival of the Dementors. First of all, in the train scene, which is amazing, and then them just being at Hogwarts and messing with Harry during the Quidditch matches and things like that. All of that sets up so well this kind of like tone of dread that is kind of over the entire book, and it just makes an overall more interesting and deep story, I feel like. But with that being said, it still keeps the really fun and lighthearted tone that you love reading in Harry Potter with the Quidditch matches, which I think are the best they've ever been, and continuing on in the books, I think Prisoner of Azkaban has the best Quidditch matches of any of the books in the series. Particularly the last match against Slytherin is so good, and both times I've read it now, I've been on the edge of my seat and genuinely don't know who's gonna win. And it's just so good, and you really feel like you're there and you're rooting Harry on. It's incredible. The backstory we get in this book is also really fantastic with the 4 Marauders, because another one of my favorite aspects in the later books is the amount of backstory we get. It almost feels like the last 3 books in this series are like history books for the world of Harry Potter. And so I love that we get a little glimpse of that in this book, while there's still that like kind of childlike vibe going on before things get really dark later in the series, because it really fleshes out the world and lets you know relationships between characters that aren't necessarily the main characters that we see all the time. It just makes the world that much more interesting, and compels you to read more and more to learn more about the world. And particularly with Lupin and Sirius towards the end of the book in those scenes in the Shrieking Shack, you really feel like there's a past between them, and you really feel like they're good friends and are trying to avenge their friend. Now, since I read the series a little bit later in life, I came into reading the series knowing a lot of the things that happened, which kind of sucks. I would have liked to go in blind, but there were certain things I knew, and one of which was that Sirius ended up being a good guy in the end. But J.K. Rowling is so good at weaving a plot together and giving you enough red herrings to throw you off her trail that I genuinely, the first time I was reading it, was constantly second-guessing myself, because I just didn't see how Sirius was going to turn out to be good in the end. And I think a big part of that, and being able to pull that off as a writer, is holding back certain information at certain points and not giving too many things to the audience or to the reader at an early point. For example, if she had started mentioning and talking about animagus in class and things like that earlier on in the books, then we would have probably started to put the pieces together in our heads because of all the random Scabbers scenes and how much attention he seems to be getting in this book for no reason. It's just like every other chapter is spent like 2 or 3 pages on Scabbers like freaking out or whatever, and it seems really important for almost no reason. So if she had planted those seeds of there being animagus alive in this world and us knowing what those were, it probably would have been a little bit easier to put together that he's actually Peter Pettigrew. But because she was able to withhold that information, it kept the idea that Sirius is after Harry a very strong possibility, and it was hard to see how there was any other way that the book was going to end. And I will be the first to say that J.K. Rowling is kind of going off the edge these days, and I wish she would just stop messing with stuff, but back in the original 7 books, she's just so good at weaving a plot together that you look at every single thing that Sirius does, and it lines up for him to be this murderous guy that's trying to kill Harry. I will say the only thing that doesn't really work for me in terms of the twist, that doesn't necessarily line up, and it very well may, I just don't really see how it does, is we hear that after Peter Pettigrew blows up the street and kills all the innocent muggles and things like that, that Sirius just stands there and laughs. Now, I don't really know why he'd do that. I feel like he should have probably been panicking that all these innocent people just got killed. The only thing I can think of is maybe he's laughing at the fact that like Peter Pettigrew got away with this and it's just like so crazy. Maybe he's in shock. I don't know. But that doesn't really line up unless, I think it was Cornelius Fudge who said that he heard that, so maybe he misheard it. But that doesn't really line up. But everything else, she does a fantastic job at making everything line up for the story. So that concludes this review. I will now be getting into the really big books in the series, so the videos may be a little bit more spaced out from here on out. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys the next time that I see you.